If you think freedom ends at prison walls, think again. Subscribe, like, and buckle up. This is where power, fear, and betrayal collide. It was July 11th, 2015. A humid night inside Altiplano, Mexico's most secure prison. The kind of place where escape was supposed to be impossible. Guards patrolled every hallway. Cameras watched every corner. And yet, somewhere deep below, a faint metallic sound echoed through the concrete. Cell 20 was supposed to be silent. That's where Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, the most dangerous drug lord alive, was locked away. But when a guard walked past the cell just before 9 p.m., the bed was empty, the shower was running, and the floor had a hole leading straight into the dark. The first camera footage showed El Chapo pacing a cell, barefoot, anxious. Then, he disappeared behind a short wall near the shower. Seconds later, nothing. The next frame showed only the steam from the water and an open tunnel. When the siren began to wail, guards stormed the block, shouting his name. Panic spread through the corridors. But El Chapo was gone. Beneath the prison, engineers later discovered a mile-long tunnel, equipped with lighting, ventilation, and even a modified motorcycle mounted on rails. It ran from a half-built house outside the prison walls, stretching like a serpent through the earth, ending right beneath the cell. Whoever built it knew everything, from the depth of the concrete foundation to the location of every guard post. The Mexican government called it a breach of national security. The world called it impossible. But to those who knew El Chapo, it was predictable. Inside the Sinaloa Cartel, whispers had already begun weeks before the escape. Large cash withdrawals, construction supplies moving through ghost companies, bribes paid to men who would later vanish. There were even rumors that a former engineer from the prison's original construction team had gone missing, last seen driving south toward Sinaloa. By morning, the entire nation was watching the footage. A billionaire drug lord had simply vanished beneath the feet of his captors. The U.S. DEA called an emergency meeting, fearing the chaos that would follow, because El Chapo's empire didn't just deal in drugs, it dealt in control. From the jungles of Colombia to the streets of Chicago, his network was built like a shadow government. Layers of loyalty bought with fear and money. His prison sentence hadn't stopped it. It had only changed the location of the throne. For months before his escape, investigators now believed El Chapo had been sending coded messages through his lawyers and corrupt guards. Orders were hidden inside innocent-looking documents, sometimes inside the folds of legal papers, sometimes in Bible verses copied by hand. From behind bars, he'd arranged drug shipments, executions, and even political payoffs. But what stunned investigators most wasn't just how he escaped. It was who helped him. One name kept surfacing: a mid-level prison officer, known for his silence and loyalty. His bank account had grown by hundreds of thousands of pesos in just 6 months. When questioned, he claimed ignorance. Days later, he disappeared. His car was found abandoned on a dirt road, doors open, keys still in ignition. The government promised to find El Chapo, but few believed it. He was a ghost again, a myth reborn. But 10 days later, a farmer in Durango reported hearing something strange. A convoy of SUVs moving through his land in the middle of the night. No lights, no plates, no sound except for engines. When soldiers arrived, the ground was covered in cigarette butts, tire marks, and something else: a torn prison uniform. That night, Mexican intelligence intercepted a signal, a phone call bouncing between 2 untraceable numbers. The voice on the recording was faint, but unmistakable. El Patron Esta Libra. The boss is free. And as the agents listened, a chill ran down their spines, because the voice giving the orders wasn't El Chapo's. It was someone inside the prison. The night after the escape, Mexico's intelligence units swarmed the countryside. Every helicopter, every checkpoint, every roadblock was on alert. But deep in the desert, the real war was unfolding. Not for El Chapo's capture, but for his crown. Inside Sinaloa, his lieutenants gathered in secret. Some celebrated their leader's freedom, while others plotted to seize what was left of his empire. The cartel was a living beast, and with his head missing, it had started to tear itself apart. But there was one person who didn't celebrate: Commander Lucia Rojas, one of the lead investigators for Mexico's federal police, had seen this before, the chaos after a king falls. She stood in front of a digital map, glowing red with cartel routes. "He's not running," she muttered. "He's reorganizing." Her theory was simple, terrifying, and soon proven true. Encrypted messages intercepted by U.S. agents revealed shipments moving through new corridors, through Honduras, Guatemala, even tunnels under the Texas border. The logistics were flawless. Someone was coordinating it all. Yet El Chapo was nowhere to be seen. Then came the whisper, a rumor from an informant inside Altiplano. A low-level guard, drunk and trembling, had confessed. The orders were still coming from the prison. How? Lucia demanded. He escaped. The guard shook his head. Not him. Someone else. Someone still in there. Lucia's eyes narrowed. The voice from the intercepted call, El Patron Esta Libra, wasn't El Chapo's. What if the entire escape was a decoy, a distraction to hide who was really controlling the empire? Her investigation turned toward the unseen, the money trail. Over $8 million had moved through offshore accounts weeks before the escape, all linked to a logistics company supplying Altiplano's construction materials. The company's owner, Miguel Torres, a respected civil engineer and former prison contractor. But Miguel was missing. His family said he'd gone into hiding after receiving threats. Others said he was already dead. Days later, a call came through to Lucia's secure line. A man's voice, distorted and calm. "You're looking in the wrong direction," he said. "El Chapo isn't your problem. The one you want never left the prison." The line went dead. Hours later, an anonymous package arrived at the federal police office. Inside was a small flash drive. Lucia plugged it in carefully. The first file was grainy footage from inside Altiplano, dated 2 weeks before the escape. It showed El Chapo sitting on a chair, calm, silent, while another inmate spoke beside him. The man's face was hidden in shadow, but his posture was confident, commanding. Guards walked in and out, bowing their heads slightly as they passed. The audio was muffled, but one sentence was clear. "Everything is ready, senor. Once you leave, we take control." Lucia froze the frame, zooming in on a tattoo barely visible on the man's wrist, a black serpent with wings. The insignia of Los Dragones, a ruthless splinter group known for their infiltration of law enforcement and their brutal assassinations. Could it be? Had El Chapo handed over his empire to a ghost organization, one that had been quietly growing from inside the very system meant to destroy him? The next morning, a tip came from U.S. intelligence, a convoy moving through the Sonora Desert, carrying what they believed was El Chapo himself. A joint task force launched an operation. When they cornered the vehicles, soldiers surrounded them, guns raised. But when the doors opened, every SUV was empty. Only bags of cash and burned cell phones remained. Lucia's phone buzzed again. A text message. No number, no name, just 5 chilling words. You were never chasing him. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. The real El Chapo was out there, but someone had used his name, his image, his myth to build something far more dangerous. Because even kings fall. But empires, if built right, never die. And as Lucia's team traced the digital fingerprints left behind, a final clue emerged. A hidden transfer of millions to a U.S.-based law firm representing El Chapo's appeals. Money marked with the same offshore routing number used by Los Dragones. The cartel hadn't been dismantled. It had migrated. But when Lucia confronted the firm's director days later, she realized too late. She was walking straight into the lion's den, because the man waiting for her across the table was the same face from the prison footage. The air inside the law firm's conference room was heavy, too still, too quiet. Commander Lucia Rojas sat across from the man she had chased through a maze of money, blood, and silence. His name, according to the firm's registry, was Eduardo Vega, a criminal attorney representing El Chapo's U.S. appeals. But the tattoo on his wrist told another story. The black serpent with wings. Los Dragones. Lucia tried to steady her breathing. You were in Altiplano, she said coldly. I've seen the footage. Eduardo smiled faintly, tapping his fingers on the table. I've been in many places, Commander, but the walls of that prison, they belong to us now. He leaned forward. El Chapo was just a symbol, a useful one. People fear what they understand, and they understood him. But power doesn't die with a man. It moves through the ones who listen. Lucia's pulse quickened. You're saying you run the cartel? Eduardo tilted his head. No, I inherited what the world built for him. Every tunnel, every bribe, every secret file. The system you worked for, it made him untouchable. I just learned from his mistakes. Outside, rain began to fall, streaking the glass walls. The city lights bled into reflections, distorting Eduardo's face, like a ghost flickering between identities. Lucia knew she couldn't arrest him. Not here, not yet. His connections reached too far, too deep, but she pressed on. Why call me? Why leave the flash drive? His expression darkened. Because someone inside your own unit has been selling information. You're not chasing a cartel anymore. Commander, you're cleaning up your own department. The words hit her like a bullet. A traitor inside the federal police. Lucia's mind raced. Only 5 people had access to her encrypted case files. One of them was her deputy investigator, Captain Morales, the man who had stood beside her since the first day of the manhunt. Before she could react, her phone buzzed violently. A message appeared from Morales' number. We found El Chapo's safe house. Send backup now. Lucia looked back at Eduardo. He smirked. Go ahead, he said softly. See who's really waiting for you. She ran out into the storm, radioing for support, her car tires screaming across the wet asphalt. The safe house was 40 miles outside the city, a crumbling ranch surrounded by dirt fields. But as she arrived, she knew something was wrong. The place was too quiet. No movement, no backup, only the hollow echo of rain hitting metal. Lucia stepped inside, flashlight trembling. The walls were lined with maps, U.S. trade routes, ports, prison blueprints. And on a dusty table lay a single object, a phone, still recording. The screen showed a video. Morales' face appeared bloodied and terrified. Behind him, Eduardo's voice spoke calmly. You trusted the wrong man, Commander. The Empire doesn't need kings. It needs architects. A deafening click, then the screen went black. Lucia backed away, heart pounding. The room exploded seconds later. The blast threw her into the dirt, debris raining down like shrapnel. When she opened her eyes, flames swallowed the safe house whole. Days later, the media called it an accident during an anti-cartel raid. But Lucia knew better. Someone had erased every trace. Files deleted, evidence gone, witnesses missing. Eduardo Vega had vanished again, leaving behind only whispers. The USDA released a report claiming El Chapo's organization had been fully dismantled. But encrypted transmissions continue from untraceable IPs, coordinating drug routes, laundering funds, moving silently across continents. Lucia was reassigned to another case, yet every night she replayed Eduardo's words. Power doesn't die, it moves. Months later, an email arrived in her inbox. No subject, no sender, just one attachment. A photo. It was a new construction site, a federal prison being built in the Arizona desert. Beneath it, faint but unmistakable, she saw the symbol of a serpent with wings carved into the concrete foundation. And in that moment, Lucia realized the truth. The Empire wasn't underground anymore. It was inside the system,